Well, how goes it, boys and girls? Welcome to another Friday live edition on at 3 o'clock. Whew. Sorry I wasn't here last week. No, I'm not. Went down to do a quick cruise with my wife, to Gail, celebrate 1 year of her putting up with me. A lot of fun. But driving from Fort Lauderdale all the way back to Albany, that makes for a long day. But hey, we made it back, had a great time. Back in the studio this week, I didn't have Tracy. Unfortunately, she's been at home sick with child, but I managed to muddle through and work on a few things. Matter of fact, there's so much crap behind the camera that you can't see right now. It's like walking through a cornfield, a corn maze. I've got too many projects. I'm spinning too many plates at the same time. So what could go wrong with that, you know? All right, anything to announce this week? Well, no, not really. Although Nathan was telling me we do have some information coming from Scott Champion next week. So he told me to hold back on that. He's doing something interesting, playing with motorcycles again for a while. You know, he's been on the jet ski circuit and also on the side-by-side circuit. Did quite well again this year, and I think he's going to switch back to two wheels. Talented guy. I mean, he is an athlete. That's just all there is to it. Annoys the crap out of just regular people like me. No, he is a good guy. All right, so let's see what questions Hank has gathered up for me this week, and whatever else y'all want to send to me as we're going through this little 30-minute session. Noisy Boy R6. Hi, John. Glad to be back again. Asking a question about the Yamaha R6 2009. Mine is currently in for service. I'm not sure why, but it's revving out in fifth gear at high RPMs, and I'm starting to really get, when he starts to really get on the throttle. I replaced my clutch 2 years ago, so it might be that. Otherwise, what else could it be? It's going to be your clutch, because in sixth gear, you're at speed, you're at the highest amount of torque that's going to be going through there at RPM, and that's when it's going to slip. And so it is time for at least another set of fiber plates. So, yep, in 2 years, if you're riding your bike as much as I think you are, it's probably about as much as you're going to get out of it. And I have a feeling you ride yours aggressively, but hey, it can handle it as long as you maintain it. That sounds like you are. KTT, hey John, I have a Triumph, 2007 Daytona 675 with light rust in the gas tank. I did the vinegary and baking soda siding trick, but it keeps flash rusting. What's the best way to coat the tank after cleaning? All right, I'm not a huge fan of coating the tanks, and unless they're just really rusted, pretty severely, and they maybe even have some pinholes in them. There was a manufacturer back in the 70s called Clean, and that's what everybody used, and it was absolute garbage because it would hold onto the tank surface for a while. It was this plasticky kind of white coating, and then it would eventually start flaking off and start gumming up and stopping up your entire fuel system. The technology is improved dramatically. There's a couple of them that I will recommend. One is the tank sealer from POR 15, and the other is a similar coating system from Red Coat, and that's REDKOTE. If it's just doing a little bit of light rust, I would recommend doing this before you go in and try to seal up your tank. Make sure it stays full, especially when you know it's going to be sitting up for a while, and add some fuel stabilizer to it and shake it around there pretty well. That fuel stabilizer, it's one of its properties is to prevent rust. So if it gets sloshed around enough at the top and you've only got that much of your tank exposed, that should take care of it. I mean, if you're going to be setting up that machine for more than a few months, you may want to consider just pulling all the fuel out of it and then leaving the top open to where it can air out, one or the other. So either fill it all the way up or take everything all the way out. Me, I would fill it all the way up, put in a little stabilizer, and then let it roll. All right, this one I had time to do research on. Jack Mann. Hey, John, I have a 1972 Honda CB175, and the cylinder head is being rebuilt. I can't find valve seals anywhere. Is it possible to run it without the seals? Yeah, well, to answer your question, can you? Yes. Should you? No. It's going to smoke like a freight train if you do that. And just for kicks, I did a quick search. We had it on the website, and those seals are available. I know you probably can't see that in the camera, but it's part number 14730-028-013. Next time, just call us. That's what we're here for. There's parts professionals much more versed at locating this stuff than I am that are on the phones all day, every day. So give us a call next time you run into a problem like that. Sammy and Lynn 906. I have a 2016 Honda 500 Rubicon that will not crank. It does nothing but click. Okay, so I purchased a new battery, a starter, a solenoid, key switch, a bank angle sensor. That's the code it was giving. Nothing has worked. What do I do now? Also, check the fuses. They tested good. I'm lost now. All right. Are you sure that it's able to turn over? I mean, is the engine locked up? I mean, we're just starting from 20,000 feet and trying to zero in on this. That's the worst case scenario. Or maybe it's locked. So get to your inspection window on the crank where you can just turn over the engine. I don't remember what the bolt size is, but that'll tell you if the engine's free or not. You've replaced just about the entire starting system, and usually when you just hear that click, that's that solenoid engaging and trying to turn the engine. So that's what makes me wonder, all right, is the engine even turnable? Now there's another occurrence where it'll click, but it doesn't really have the torque behind it because it doesn't have enough power. That's usually caused by a dead battery. But you're telling me that you have a new battery, that it's a healthy one. I've opened up a new battery, put acid in it, charged it, and it had a problem. So go back and check your voltage on the battery. Make sure it's north of 12.5, because it happens. I mean, sometimes you'll have a cracked cell in there and it'll deliver maybe 9-10 volts, and that's enough to just make that click, but not really engage the starter itself. And last but not least, go check the negative side of your equation. And when I say the negative side, I'm talking about your negative cable. Make sure that there's no corrosion on the connection at the battery, and then follow it down to wherever it goes, usually on the frame somewhere on most Hondas, and it just has a bolt there. Make sure that bolt hadn't loosened up and it's making a good connection, doesn't have any corrosion on the other side in between that the actual connector and the frame itself. All right, what else do we got here? JDDEFO 1022. How long can I safely idle my VTX 1300 off a car battery? Is there any risk of damaging the charging system on the motorcycle? I plan to leave the battery in the car and run the cables directly to the bike. Thanks. That won't hurt anything, but just do not start your car while it's running. Your car is designed to charge the battery at north of 14 volts. I mean, it really can push a lot of current through there. If you start it when you've got your motorcycle connected, it's going to try to send juice into your machine and potentially damage your electronics, most importantly, your ECU. So just don't start your car while you're doing this. How long can you? I guess for as long as you need to, but I would assume you're just trying to crank it up a few times during the winter or whatever season before you just to make sure the fuel system isn't gummed up. I do that myself. What should you be doing? Put a regular battery in it as there should be, and keep a battery tender on it. But hey, if you're just I'm just answering your question, yes, you can do that and it won't harm it. Just don't start that car. Kino 266. My regulator is not controlling the voltage. Bad regulator. My battery is being overcharged. Seen that before. All the diodes seem to work. I don't know if I should buy a new regulator rectifier or try to fix my current one. Well, there's really no fixing a regulator rectifier. Those little things, basically it's a set of heat sinks, and they've got the electronics and the diodes and whatnot on the inside, and then they pour this epoxy filler. So there's no getting in there. Although I did open one up, and it took me forever to chisel my way through it. I wonder what happened to that thing. It's pretty cool. But depending on which regulator or regulator rectifier it is, I've walked through several videos where I'll show you how to test the diodes. But depending on which manufacturer it is, you may not be able to see with your test equipment all of the diodes. You may just see one half of the circuit, depending on how it's designed and what you can actually, what the tester can actually reach in and either forward or reverse bias. So you may be able to check 3 of them, but there may be 3 more on the other side that you can't get to from the just those 3 terminals on the outside of most regulator rectifiers. So it's a 99% probability. If you go ahead and replace that regulator rectifier, you're going to be good to go. All right, that's it for stuff being sent in during the week. Let's see what Hank has for me this week. All right, Lance. Hi, 2016. Hold on a second. 2016 Polaris Sportsman 850 SP. That was an XP. Nothing says. Replaced the regulator, stator, and battery. It still can't start without a charger on it, and a battery slowly dies while running. My last guess would be a bad wire or a ground. Any thoughts? Much help in the Bering Sea on an island. I can't be thousands to ship it back. Well, we're going to figure this out then, aren't we? Let's see. You've done the regulator, you've done the stator, and you've done the battery, and it's not charging it. So I would definitely be suspect of the wiring going from the regulator rectifier and the stator. You need to go wire by wire and see if that has been damaged somewhere in there. So that's going to be a 3-phase. So if you lose one phase, it's pretty much going to knock out its ability to effectively charge it. On the negatives, do I think it's anything on the negative side? Probably not. I think it's going to be one of those 3 wires is broken in between one side of that machine to the other. So just get out a voltometer and start ohming them out. I do want to make mention of one thing. I've tested wires before where just using a meter, I mean, there's a very low voltage that it's putting through there to give you that resistance. It'll test as if it's continuous all the way through, but it may be halfway damaged and only making, let's say if you've got a stranded wire and it's got, I'm just going to use the number, 30 strands inside of that wire that's going through, and let's say 90% of them are eaten through. When I say eaten, I've run up on more than one rat infestation where mice and rat they just love to chew up wiring harnesses. Don't know why, but it would test okay, but it could not pass the current through. So just be leery of that when you're doing your testing. Test it with a voltometer and then visually go through and see if you can see any disturbance where it has been gnawed on by chance. Peter Gibbons asks, he has a 2014 Polaris Sportsman XP, and will I need a bearing grease insert tool to grease the front and rear bearing carriers? Also curious of John's opinion of those tools and other option. The bearings should already be packed, and if I remember correctly, if we're talking about the wheel bearings, they're sealed, so there's nothing you should have to do there, unless I'm misunderstanding which bearings that we're talking about. So the only thing that I have to grease on the Polaris is that I need a zerk gun for is just the pivot points on the suspension. But to my knowledge, there is no greasing of the bearings themselves. Gas ask, what is the Partzilla origin story? Okay, that may take a minute. There was a boat dealership down in called Central Florida Yamaha, and the owner of this company and his wife went in there to have one of their boats serviced, and they were not impressed with the dealership, and the owner of this company looked at or made a bet. He said, listen, sell me your company or sell me this dealership and I'll show you how to run it, which he did. One of the guys that worked back in the back, who is now a director of this company, he started out with the company washing boats, came up with a novel idea of selling parts online, and thus boats.net was born. This is going to be a very truncated explanation to your question. After they've been doing this for a couple of years, doing quite well at it, they noticed that they were selling a lot of parts that were not marine on the Yamaha side. And for whatever anomaly, through the website, they were in conjunction with Yamaha, they were actually selling some power sports stuff just by accident. I mean, it was mostly stuff that it was cross-referenced and used on multiple marine engines, as far as the power and as well as the power sports side. But it was a significant number to where it caught our attention. At that point, the owner of this company looked at a little dealership here in Albany, Georgia, because he wanted to start selling power sports parts, and that was in roughly 2010. I just happened to be at that dealership at that time. Well, we started shipping parts out of the warehouse side of that dealership. I think it was around 4,000 square feet. That's what we had to work with. And Power Sports Plus was born, which we rebranded or renamed as Partzilla.com. Since then, we've been through 1, 2, 3 buildings now before we finally ended up here. But he wasn't messing around with this one. 240,000 square feet, sitting on 50 acres. So we could multiply the building times 10 if we need to, or when we need, I should say when we need to. But that's the truncated version of how Partzilla ended up here. Now, how did I end up in this seat? Well, I was the GM at that dealership for several years, and then our CEO tasked me with doing a pilot of a how-to video, how to do an oil change, which I did shooting with just one of my own personal cameras there at the dealership. And somehow or another that evolved into this. It's been a fun ride, and it's not over yet. But there you go. There's the Partzilla story, the short version. Now, if you want to read more about it, do a Google search for the Outdoor Network, and it'll take you to the main website, the corporate website. And there's a lot of information as far as the timeline and when it started and how long it's been going on and the different lines. And just a lot of fun information if you want to pick through it. So do a search for the outdoornetwork.com. All right, Richard's been waiting long enough. Richard Morgan asks, my 2016 Polaris Ranger 900 XP shut off on me the other day on the way home. I had the radio turned up and was just riding. We're supposed to be turned up. It started sputtering and acted like it quit getting fuel and then just shut off. I figured maybe something in the fuel system, injectors maybe. My buddy mentioned that when the battery voltage gets below 12 volts, the injectors will start acting up. Have you seen this before? I don't want to start diagnosing the fuel system if it could be a power issue. I would say definitely go look at your power first, especially if you've got ancillary devices like lighting bars and sound systems. That puts an extra drain on it, and sometimes it taxes it a little bit too much, and you may be going through regulator rectifiers and or stators. But yeah, if most of your injectors, you can activate them with anywhere from 9 to like 15 or 14 volts. So they've got a pretty wide range. But if that voltage drops below 12, that's going to start messing with your ECU because it doesn't have the operating voltage it needs to control the engine and the machine in general. So yeah, put a meter on it and then go out for a ride and see what she does. If it isn't maintaining somewhere in between 12.4 to 13.5 volts, you've got a charging issue. Now, if you've got too much of a load on it and it's pulling more from your charging system more than it has in reserve on the battery, you may want to look at doing adding in a second battery. Now, I'm pretty sure on the 16 Ranger, they actually have a kit to where you can double up on your battery. that also would save you if you use a battery isolator, not to get too deep in the woods here. That way, when you're parked and you don't want to run your machine, you've got one battery that's isolated and it's playing your sound system. Great. You run it down, but guess what? When you hit start, your start battery is separated, so it hasn't been drained. So if that's what you're doing with it, you may want to consider adding in that second battery with an isolator. That's the important part. So this is all stuff most people do with boats. But hey, if you're just wanting to sit around and listen to some music, this is a no. It's start when you're ready to head back to the trailer. All right, Theodore Leonard says, I have an 01 GSXR 600 and I can't find a brand new fuel pump assembly anywhere. Only used, but I did find a new off-brand fuel pump on eBay. Thinking about giving it a try. Yeah, I understand. Just be careful. Just be careful. I buy a lot of stuff on eBay as well, man, especially when I'm working with really old stuff like my 73 CT90, et cetera, or my 74 Fiat. And eBay can be a good place to source that out. The trick is you've got some stuff that's actually decently built and you've got other that's just utter crap. I mean, it may look the part, but it won't last. So just be a little bit leery when you're doing that. Go to somebody that has a lot of good reviews, and especially and track down just that one part number, and maybe do a forum search just on Google and get people's opinion of whatever this aftermarket one is you're looking at on eBay. DIY Dan says, just saw another X3 out on and up. What are these people doing to have fires like that? I've seen it a few times. I'm not sure, but I would imagine, fortunately, I haven't experienced this. It's either one of two things, a leaking fuel system or an electrical issue, and it's got to be one of the two. So I would be curious to know what modifications this person may or may not have done on the X3. But I'll tell you what, I will take a peek and just start poking around and see if I can come up with a better answer than that. Sound like a deal? Maybe I'll lead off with it next week. All right, looks like we've got one more. Ricky MVP asks, I have a 2012 motor with a spun rod on cylinder number 2. There are signs of a piston getting in contact with the blockhead, just very small gouge. The bearing was basically welded to the crankshaft. What part should be replaced? I want to rebuild it myself. Should I replace all 4 pistons or just the piston number 2? Well, I need a new crankshaft or different size bearings. All right, here we go. Yeah, when that bearing spun, it basically was not controlling the piston as it should. And that explains why it went all the way up and made contact with the head. All right. Now, if it spun and then it welded to the crankshaft, oh boy, you're going to have to either find a really talented machine shop that can clean up and resize that journal of that particular the connecting rod where it connects in. Or the safe thing, what I would do would probably be just to replace the crankshaft. Now, you didn't give me your year, make, or model, so of course, most every 4-cylinder that I've worked with is usually a performance engine. There's a sizing procedure that you have to go through. If you're unfamiliar with this, I went into some depth on it when I did the R6, our 636 build. So if you go look at that playlist, I think we actually did a breakout video that shows the process, at least for Yamaha, of how you size the bearings on both the crankshaft as far as its rotating bearings with the block, and then as well as the connector rod bearings. It basically they've determined the size of the crankshaft journals, and that's printed on one of the weights or counterweights, and then you'll get the information off your connecting rods as to their size, and then put that into an equation to determine what the thickness is of the bearing shells. But after you've done all that, it's verify it with some plastic gauge just to make sure that you're in the ballpark. And Hank also says this is a 2012 R6. Well, definitely go check out that video. I think mine was like an 08, but it's going to be very, very similar if you're going to tackle this. So, yeah, go check it out. It's time consuming, but it's you can do it. Go check out that engine build, and I'll walk you through all the way. All right, guys. Hank, I see you there typing. You got anything else for me? All right. Looks like we're good. 3:28. Boy, that went by quick. All right, kids. Well, we are going to call it a day. Anything else? Anybody that's watching this later, send in your questions to our email address, and I'm sure Hank will pop it up there before we sign off. That askpartzilla@partzilla.com. I can never remember it. It's pretty sad, isn't it? All right, kids. Well, everybody have a great weekend, a great week, and God willing, we will do this all again next Friday at 3. Y'all take care.